So I'm going to show you some stuff now, some tools that might be useful. And that's really what strategic thinking does. It's saying, what's the bigger picture? Where are we going with it? So how we can get where we're going using what we already know. And the last one, of course, what might change our plans? Things might completely change. So here's some of the elements of strategy. These are some things that you might want to think about. What is the target area? You know as an optometrist what your target area is on a day-to-day basis. Is that where you want it to continue to be? And why is it you better to do that than the person down the road, or the person in London, or the person that's working online and selling stuff that you've never heard of? And then how are you going to get to where you want to get to? And then how fast? And then what's the payoff? So here's the lovely SWOT matrix. I'm sure you've all seen that before, and if you haven't, you will grow to love it, but it's been well used. I've got a possibly slightly different take on this now, because you can have a look at the two of the different boxes together and think, yeah, just try and think a little bit laterally. And again, this is about thinking ahead and thinking in a slightly different way, maybe to project your own future. So look at S&O, the strengths and the opportunities. So how can your strengths give you a chance to take advantage of all your opportunities? So if one of your strengths is that you have a very good reputation for being very ethical with customers, what opportunities might that present? And then how can you use your strengths to tackle possible threats? What about which opportunities will enable you to overcome your weaknesses? So quite a lot of you are sole practitioners. What would be a weakness of being a sole practitioner? What about sickness? I mean, we talked about locums. What other way could you deal with the weakness of being a sole practitioner and possibly being sick? But you might think about, what systems do I put in place? So if I'm poorly for a day and have to get somebody in at short notice, how do I tell my customers? How do I make it all right for my patients to know that it's not going to be me? And the last one, the slightly more depressing ones, how can you minimise your exposure to threats that exploit your weaknesses? How would you minimise your exposure to that threat? And then again, you can do a bit of playing with SWOT. So you can say, okay, how could a threat turn into an opportunity? So big chain coming, bit scary. How can that be an opportunity? What can we take? So if, say, a giant branch of Eyes R Us opens in your town, how could that be an opportunity for you? It's worth sometimes just turning these things on their head a bit and thinking, okay, life isn't always out to get you. Sometimes, you can benefit from it. What's the difference between a want and a need? Okay, a need is something you can't do without, and a want is something that you'd quite like to have. And so, I mean, you could say in an optician's, maybe a need is something you need a new pair of glasses. You might want the £500 frames, but you can only afford the £200 frames. So it's worth thinking about what customers want and need, or your patients want and need, because if you can give them what they need and some of what they want, in fact quite a lot of what they want, you will probably find that's a very good way to build patient loyalty.